At my wedding, my mom smiled and said, "We swapped the designer cake for a cheaper one, you'll thank us later." My best friend whispered, "Check under the tablecloth." What I found made my parents go pale. Growing up in a middle-class suburb outside Sacramento, California, I always knew exactly where I stood in my family. Not because they told me outright, but because of how they looked at Owen. Their faces lit up when he entered the room. His every achievement was announced like a Nobel Prize. Owen got a perfect score again. Owen is going to UCLA. Owen just got published in an academic journal. And then there was me. Marissa. She's creative. That's what they said when they couldn't figure out how to describe me without embarrassment. I was the kid who doodled floor plans during math class and spent afternoons rearranging furniture in my room for fun. My grades were average. My interests didn't check the boxes they valued. My mom, Francine, once asked me why I couldn't be more like my brother. My dad didn't ask. He just told me I'd be lucky to flip burgers someday. I learned early not to expect recognition from them. Or affection, really. High school was a blur. I scraped by, worked part-time at a craft store, and buried myself in drawing buildings I imagined living in. I didn't have a 5-year plan. I just knew I needed out. So at 20, I moved into a shared rental with 2 girls I barely knew and worked 2 jobs while attending community college. I didn't tell my parents I changed my major from business to architecture. They never asked. It was hard. I won't pretend otherwise. I slept 4 hours a night and ate canned soup more than I should admit. But I loved what I was studying. It was the first time I felt like I wasn't wasting my time trying to impress anyone. By my late 20s, I graduated from UC Berkeley with a degree in architecture. My first real job was as a junior designer at a boutique firm in Oakland. I kept my head down, worked hard, and took projects no one else wanted. Slowly, I built a reputation. I learned how to lead, how to manage, how to earn respect without demanding it. By the time I was 34, I was offered a senior leadership position at Harperforge Projects in San Francisco. We designed and managed major urban development projects across the West Coast. It was a big deal. The kind of role I didn't even know I could dream of when I was younger. I never heard a word from my family during that rise. No congratulations. No curious questions. Owen was still the center of their world. Then, 2 weeks ago, my phone rang. It was Owen. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. The last time was at our parents' anniversary dinner, where he casually joked that I was still doing the drawing thing like I was finger painting at a daycare. That night, I left early. No one noticed. So when I saw his name flash on my screen, I hesitated. I thought maybe someone died. But no, he was calling for a favor. "Hey, Riss," he started, voice uncertain. "I was wondering if you had any connections at Harperforge?" I waited. He knew exactly who I worked for. He danced around the truth at first. Said things had been a little unpredictable. That he was looking for something temporary but meaningful. Eventually, it came out, he hadn't worked steadily in almost 2 years. Laid off twice. Burned a few bridges. Couldn't get a call back from any of the firms he used to scoff at. I listened. I let him speak. And when he finally asked if there were any internship-level roles at Harperforge, I almost laughed. Instead, I said, "Sure. Send me your resume." He did. It looked decent on paper, big names, lots of buzzwords. But I could see the cracks. Gaps in employment. Vague titles. Nothing recent. I had him come in for an interview, just like anyone else. My HR manager, Serena, ran the meeting. I sat quietly, pretending we were strangers. He introduced himself with a rehearsed smile and avoided any mention of me or our family. He fumbled through the interview. Couldn't explain the gaps in a convincing way. Dropped names and jargon like confetti, hoping to dazzle. It didn't work. Afterward, Serena turned to me and said, "That guy? Not ready. Not even for an internship." I agreed. But I still offered him a low-level operations assistant role at our Oakland office. Not glamorous. But a real job. A way back in. He took it. At first, he was polite. Quiet. But it didn't take long before he started acting like he was entitled to more. He told other employees he was working directly under executive leadership, meaning me. He tried to wedge into planning meetings, cornered junior staff with mentorship, and asked for access to databases he didn't need. Luis, the actual team lead he reported to, came to me confused. He keeps offering to fix things that aren't broken, he said. And he mentioned he's in talks for promotion? I had to pull Owen aside. You can't use my name to get access, I told him. You're here to learn and support the operations team. That's it. He looked tired. The kind of tiredness that doesn't come from work but from disappointment. I'm just trying to find my footing again, he said quietly. Do you have any idea how hard it is out there right now? I looked at him, and for the first time I saw not the perfect brother, not the pedestal my parents built, but a man who'd finally slipped and didn't know how to stand without a spotlight. But I also remembered every holiday he talked to me about. Every time he laughed at my work, dismissed my path, mimicked our father's sneer when I said I was studying design. I didn't owe him comfort. 2 days later, he quit. No notice. Just vanished. A week after that, my mom emailed me. We heard about what happened with Owen. You didn't need to humiliate him. He came to you for help. That was it. No mention of the years I built myself from nothing. No asking how I was. Just scolding me for not treating Owen like the crown prince he used to be. I didn't reply. The following month, a coworker sent me a screenshot. Owen's LinkedIn now said he was a strategic consultant at Harperforge Projects. Total fiction. He was never in strategy. He didn't even make it to month 2. I had our HR team report it. It was taken down within hours. That's when it hit me, he still needed to be seen as someone important. Even if it was a lie. Even if it cost him his last connection to stability. And me? I no longer needed to be seen at all. I had arrived. Quietly. On my own. I'd like to say that made me feel triumphant. But honestly, it just made me feel tired. Still, I slept better that night than I had in years. A few weeks after the LinkedIn situation, I found myself thinking about Owen more than I wanted to. Not out of guilt, because deep down, I knew I had been fair, but out of confusion. How could someone who was once so far ahead of me, in the eyes of everyone who mattered, now be struggling just to hold on? It made me revisit things. Memories I'd pushed down for years started surfacing. Like the time in 5th grade when I came home with a handmade model of a treehouse I'd spent 2 weeks building for class. I was proud. It had real miniature furniture I'd shaped out of clay, a rope ladder made from twine, even little solar panels I painted with metallic nail polish. I set it on the kitchen table and waited for their reaction. My dad glanced at it for half a second before saying, "Did you clean up the garage like I asked?" Then Owen walked in, holding a certificate for winning the regional math Olympiad, and the whole house practically threw a parade. I took the model to my room. It stayed on a shelf until I moved out. That moment encapsulates my childhood. My brother could blink, and it was newsworthy. I could bleed for my passions, and it was background noise. So no, when Owen showed up at my company looking for a handout, it wasn't revenge I felt. It was clear. That week, I got a calendar reminder about my parents' anniversary. They'd be married 40 years. In the past, I might have sent flowers or called. This time, I let it pass. Quietly. Without comment. A few days later, I received another email from my mother. "We noticed you didn't call. Your father was disappointed. Owen says you've changed." I didn't respond to that one either. The truth was, I had changed. I no longer needed their approval, or Owen's. I didn't crave being acknowledged at the family table or long for them to suddenly see my worth. I had spent decades trying to become someone they could respect, and in the process, I became someone I respected. My days were now filled with work I loved, designing mixed-use spaces in communities that had long been overlooked. I mentored young women just entering the field, many of whom reminded me of who I was at 22, unsure, capable, and waiting for someone to believe in them. I never talked about my family to my team. They knew me as Marissa, the VP who read every blueprint twice and always answered emails before noon. They didn't need to know about the childhood wounds I carried like invisible tattoos. Still, every now and then, someone would bring up Owen. Usually an old high school friend who messaged me on LinkedIn or someone from our town asking, "Whatever happened to your brother? He was so brilliant." I would smile and say, last I heard, he was figuring things out. Because I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I just didn't owe him the stage anymore. Then came the voicemail. I was driving home from a zoning meeting in Walnut Creek when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. It was Owen. Hey, Marissa. Look. I know you're probably not thrilled to hear from me. But I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For taking advantage. For making assumptions. For being a shitty brother. I've been thinking a lot about stuff lately, and I don't know what I expected when I showed up there. Maybe part of me just wanted to feel like I wasn't slipping so far down. Anyway, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. He hung up before I could say anything. I played the message again that night, sitting on the balcony of my apartment, the fog creeping in over the Bay Bridge like it always did in May. I didn't cry. But I felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe, a door I'd locked finally rattled. I didn't call back. Not because I wanted to punish him. But because I wasn't sure what I'd say. And for once, I wanted to speak from a place that wasn't shaped by years of needing to be heard. Later that week, I ran into Serena in the hallway at work. You heard from your brother again, she asked casually, remembering the resignation and LinkedIn fiasco. I nodded. Yeah. He called. Left a message. She tilted her head. What did he want? I paused. Maybe just, to be human. She smiled a little. Funny how that happens when the pedestal disappears. I laughed. Yeah. It is. I had a project review that afternoon, but part of me couldn't stop thinking about Owen's voice. It sounded different. Weaker. Not the same smug confidence I grew up with. It made me wonder how many times I had sounded like that, tired, uncertain, asking for grace in a world that offered none freely. That night, I sat down to draft a reply. Not a response to his voicemail, just something for myself. I didn't know yet if I'd send it. But I wanted to get it out of my head. Owen, we were kids in the same house, but we lived different lives. You got praised for breathing. I had to perform miracles just to be noticed. I don't know if you ever understood how that felt. Maybe now, you're starting to. I don't hate you. But I also can't pretend nothing happened. I'm still figuring out what kind of relationship we can have. If you're open to that, maybe we can start with honesty. Marissa, I stared at the screen for a long time before closing my laptop. I didn't hit send. But it felt like a beginning. A few weeks passed, and I kept the message saved in my drafts. I didn't revisit it often, but I also couldn't bring myself to delete it. Every once in a while, when I had a quiet moment between site inspections or waiting for renderings to load, I'd open it and tweak a word here or there. But I still didn't send it. I wasn't sure if I wanted a conversation with Owen, or if I just wanted the space to say what had never been said. Then, in early June, I got a call from my cousin Leah, who still lived near our childhood neighborhood in Fair Oaks. She was always the neutral party in our family, the only one who saw through the favoritism but never stirred the pot. You might want to know, she said gently, Owen's moved back in with your parents. That hit harder than I expected. Back in the house where his every need was once celebrated and my quiet ambitions were ignored. I tried to picture him in his old room, now probably turned into a storage space, surrounded by boxes of the life he couldn't sustain. He okay? I asked. Leah hesitated. He's not great. He's picking up contract work here and there. Drives for Instacart sometimes. I think your mom's still trying to spin it like he's in transition. But it's clear something broke. I didn't know what to say. Not because I didn't feel anything. But because I felt too much. Anger, guilt, pity, and a strange, unexpected sadness. It was so quiet on the phone that Leah added, I'm not telling you this because I think you should reach out. Just, thought you should know. I thanked her and hung up. That night, I sat in my apartment with the TV on but muted, watching shadows flicker across the living room walls as the city pulsed below me. The high-rise lights shimmered across glass towers like a heartbeat, constant, alive, indifferent. I thought about my parents' house. The beige stucco, the scratchy beige carpet, the cracked leather recliner my dad wouldn't let anyone throw out. The house I couldn't wait to leave, but also, the house where I learned how to survive disappointment. I couldn't help but wonder if Owen finally felt what it was like to be invisible in that house. Or worse, what it felt like to be pitted by the very people who once worshipped you. About a week later, I got a short, shaky email from him. Subject: Hey, not sure if this will go straight to spam, but I just wanted to say thanks for not completely writing me off. I know I don't deserve your time right now, and I know I made a lot of assumptions. I've been trying to get back on my feet. It's harder than I thought. I think I finally get it, Riss. What it was like for you all those years. I wish I'd seen it sooner. There was no signature. No sign-off. Just that raw paragraph, hanging like a confession that didn't ask for a response. I stared at it for an hour before closing the tab. Then I walked to the corner deli, bought a turkey sandwich, and sat in the park with my thoughts. I wasn't angry anymore. But I wasn't ready to be his therapist either. I'd built a life of careful boundaries, and Owen had a way of slipping through cracks with the entitlement of someone who was always caught before they fell. Still, something had shifted. Not just in him. In me, too. A few days later, I was giving a presentation at a city council meeting about a community housing project we'd been developing in San Leandro. It was a tough crowd, lots of local resistance, lots of misinformation. I stood at the front of that room, defending a vision that had been in the works for nearly 18 months. Afterward, one of the residents, a retired schoolteacher named Mrs. Gutierrez, came up to me. You remind me of one of my old students, she said. Smart. Quiet. Never really got the recognition she deserved until later. I smiled and thanked her. But what she said stuck. That night, I went home, opened my email, and finally hit send. Hey Owen, thanks for your message. I appreciate the honesty, it's a good start. I'm not ready to hash everything out, but if you're serious about rebuilding something, maybe one step at a time, we can start with a conversation. I have time next Friday afternoon. Coffee? No expectations. Just two adults who have some things to unpack. Let me know. Marissa. I didn't hear back right away. That was fine. The ball was in his court now. The following Friday, I showed up at a small coffee shop near Lake Merritt, one with big windows and quiet corners where people could talk without being overheard. I ordered a black coffee and sat by the window. It was one of those soft, gray Bay Area afternoons where the sky felt closer than usual. At 2:17 p.m., Owen walked in. He looked thinner. A little older than his 39 years. He wore a plain button-down and jeans that didn't quite fit, like he'd lost weight recently. But his eyes, they weren't defensive. They were cautious. Like someone who'd finally realized they weren't the smartest person in every room. He walked over, sat down, and nodded. Thanks for meeting me, he said. I just nodded. Didn't think you'd show. Neither did I. There was silence between us, not awkward, just full. We both sipped our coffee, looking out the window for a minute before he spoke again. I've been doing some consulting work for a nonprofit. Very part-time. But it's something. That's good. I don't think I ever apologized to you, properly. You didn't. He looked down at the table. I'm sorry, Riss. I really am. I studied his face. He wasn't performing. There was no smugness. No deflection. Just a man trying to say something overdue. Okay, I said quietly. Thank you. We sat there for almost an hour, talking about neutral things, work, old classmates, how weird it was getting older. He didn't ask for anything. Not a referral, not a job, not another chance. Just time. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a trap. When we got up to leave, he looked at me and said, I hope this isn't the only time we talk. I shrugged. Depends on whether you keep being honest. He smiled, not the polished, showy one he used to wear like a badge, but a small one. Real. I'll try. I watched him walk away down the sidewalk, unsure of what came next. But for the first time, I wasn't carrying the weight of being lesser. I wasn't trying to outshine him, or outgrow him, or outprove anyone. I was just me. And that finally felt like enough. The next few months passed quietly. Owen and I texted a few times, short, polite exchanges. I kept him at arm's length, but I no longer felt the need to flinch every time his name popped up on my phone. That coffee conversation shifted something fundamental. Not just between us, but in me. I wasn't holding on to old wounds anymore. And that gave me space to focus on what truly mattered: my work, my peace, and my future. In October, my firm landed the Bayline Eco Redevelopment Project, our biggest yet. A multi-phase transformation of an old industrial stretch of land along the San Francisco waterfront. It had been a controversial bid, heavily scrutinized by the city and local residents. We won not because we were the biggest firm, but because we understood what people wanted: homes, not towers. Parks, not parking lots. Something livable, not profitable. It was my design that tipped the scales. My vision, the very thing that once earned me nothing but shrugs at home, was now the centerpiece of a billion-dollar contract. The company made a quiet announcement on a Tuesday morning. My name was listed on the press release as lead architect and project director. I didn't post about it. I didn't need to. But word spread fast. By Thursday, I got a call from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text from my father. Saw you on the local news. Congrats, Marissa. Looks like all that drawing finally paid off. I laughed, actually laughed. It wasn't the message itself. It was that now, they believed it was worth acknowledging. Not when I graduated, not when I got promoted, not when I out-earned every man in the family. Only when a TV camera told them so. I didn't reply. A few days later, I was invited to a university panel at UC Berkeley to speak to architecture students about socially responsive design. It was a full-circle moment, speaking at the place I used to wander through in worn-out sneakers, too intimidated to raise my hand. The night before the panel, I got an email from Owen. Hey, this is random, but I've been trying to get a foot in the door at a few design tech firms. Do you have any contacts at Hurst & Gray? I heard you're tight with their team. A recommendation from you would go a long way. There it was. Not cruel. Not rude. But undeniably familiar. I sat with the email open for a while. And for once, I didn't feel conflicted. I wasn't angry or hurt. Just done. I wrote back, Hi Owen, unfortunately, I'm not comfortable offering a recommendation right now. Those kinds of introductions are based on long-term trust and collaboration. I wish you well with your applications, and I hope you continue building experience in the field. Best, Marissa. It was polite. Professional. Sharp enough to close the door, but not so harsh it would draw blood. The kind of response someone would send when they held power, quiet, steady, and unmoved. He didn't reply. And I didn't expect him to. 2 weeks later, I got a package at the office. No return address. Inside was a small, dusty cardboard box with my name scrawled in awkward cursive, Marissa, and a sticky note inside. Found this while cleaning out the attic. Thought you might want it. Mom. I opened the box. Inside was the treehouse model I built in 5th grade. The clay furniture was chipped. The twine ladder frayed. The solar panels faded. But it was intact. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it meant anything anymore, but because once, just once, I'd wanted someone to see it. And now, decades later, it has come back to me. A full circle of rejection, return, and quiet reclamation. I placed it on the shelf in my office, right next to my framed license and a photo of the Bayline team breaking ground. People asked about it sometimes, why I kept a beat-up model among polished renderings and sleek portfolios. I always smiled and said, that was the first time I ever built something that felt like home. And that was true. The real revenge wasn't in punishing Owen. It wasn't rubbing anything in my parents' faces. It was in becoming someone they could no longer ignore, but no longer needed. It was knowing that I built a life no one could take credit for but me. In the end, I didn't flip burgers. I built empires. And I did it quietly. Without applause. And without permission.